Thank you, Michael. Let's get more now on the federal government's State of the Environment report, which is out this morning. We're joined now by the Federal Energy and Environment Minister, Josh Frydenberg, who's in Melbourne. Good morning to you.
Nice to be with you, Del.
You too. Now, tell me about the key findings of this report. Most of them, they do point out that there are some gains, but it also points out that there's still a lot of work to do, particularly when it comes to climate change.
Well, this report comes out every 5 years. The government of the day releases it into the Parliament under the Environmental Protection, Biodiversity and Conservation Act. It's prepared by independent authors, and as you say, this year's report has some positive stories in it, but also indicates where there is much work to be done. In terms of the good news, we are seeing improvements in the ozone layer above the Antarctic. We're seeing more areas, more Indigenous areas subject to protection, and we're also seeing more places listed on the National Heritage List and our World Heritage List. But as you say, climate change continues to be a major challenge, and we've seen a bleaching event last year in the Barrier Reef, and we're concerned about further bleaching events, and climate change and the El Nino effect causes for that. And we're also seeing some real challenges with invasive species, and particularly feral cats that prey on marsupials and birds and reptiles, many of which are on the endangered list.
And of course, talking about climate change, apart from the coral bleaching and the Great Barrier Reef, 2016 was also the hottest year on record. So, Minister, how serious really is your government about tackling this issue of climate change, given the fact that you have also received criticism in this report?
Well, we've been very serious about meeting our Paris targets, which are a 26 to 28% reduction on 2005 levels by 2030. And as you'd be aware, we met our first Kyoto target, and we're on track to significantly beat our 2020 target. The report points out that emissions per capita have come down from about 24 tonnes down to 22 tonnes over the last 5 years, and we've seen improvements in efficiency when it comes to electricity use, which is putting downward pressure on demand. That being said, this is a global problem. We're investing record amounts, whether it's through the Emission Reduction Fund, whether it's through our National Energy Productivity Plan, whether it's through a renewable energy target to meet our goals.
Let's talk about the renewable energy target, Minister, because the Coalition has questioned the reliability of renewable energy in Australia. And in order to achieve that renewable energy target, I mean, how can we be serious about tackling climate change if we're not going to make renewable energy an increasing part of that mix?
Well, it is an increasing part of our mix, Del. In fact, it was legislated through the Parliament.
But you've also thrown your support behind coal-fired plants, I mean, subsidising clean coal. Experts say that this is going to make renewable energy targets increasingly difficult to reach.
Well, the facts are these, that today Australia has about 15% of its power generation coming from renewable sources. We're committed to getting that up to 23.5 by 2020. That will be quite a stretch, but we're investing, for example, through ARENA and the Clean Energy Finance Corporation in R&D, in practical solar and wind projects and a whole range of renewable energy initiatives. What we've seen in South Australia and more broadly across the world are real practical engineering technological challenges about incorporating or integrating into the grid large amounts of intermittent sources of power, namely wind and solar, when the wind's not blowing or the sun's not shining, power's not being generated, into the grid. Now, that's a technical issue, an engineering one that Alan Finkel, our chief scientist, is looking at in the context of the Finkel review, but that is something that can be overcome over time. And we just need to focus on the practical issues, not the ideological ones.
Now, the other point of criticism in this report, and the last point I'll talk about in this report, is that there's a failure of a national plan to actually protect Australian landscapes by 2050. Are you going to be taking this seriously and developing a plan for 2050?
Well, we have an annual meeting of environment ministers from the states, the territories and led by the Commonwealth, and we have agreed on a number of new initiatives to improve our data collection and to improve the health of the environment. So we're implementing those, but there are some very positive signs about land management in this report, particularly the fact that more areas are now being subject to conservation. We take these issues very seriously. We must protect the commons, regardless of our political persuasion. It's about leaving a legacy for the future generations that is better than the one we inherited, and that's why this report and others like it are very important, Del.
Certainly is. Minister, I also want to talk to you about some reports in the Fairfax paper this morning that Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull is considering a major restructure that would essentially create a US-style Department of Homeland Security. Can you tell us a bit more about these plans? What would that look like?
Well, this is a speculative report, and I'm not going to delve into speculation, particularly because it's not my portfolio area either. But we take these issues around border protection, intelligence gathering, counter-terrorism very, very seriously. It's been around 900 days since we have had an unauthorised boat arrival. We're very conscious of the domestic security threat. That's why we continue to better resource our intelligence and law enforcement agencies, and we have succeeded since about mid-2014 of passing through the Parliament 5 tranches of legislation in this space, which has been very important in tackling the domestic security threat. So we're always looking to improve our level of coordination between agencies and between levels of government, but this report is speculation and I'm not going to comment on.
Okay, moving to another topic then. Your colleague and Employment Minister, Michaelia Cash, has failed to declare a mortgage of $1.4 million on an investment property. How do you forget about $1 million property you own?
Well, as she said, it was an oversight. She apologised for it. The Prime Minister's accepted that. She is an excellent minister, and this is just one small mistake that has been quickly corrected.
But it is a very serious mistake. In fact, it took Senator Cash 78 days to declare the house, 109 days to declare the mortgage. If you don't declare within 35 days, you can actually be in serious contempt of the Senate. Is an apology really good enough?
Well, we're all conscious of our obligations, and I think in the scheme of things this is very minor. It's been corrected. There's nothing to hide here, and we just need to get on with the job of governing for all Australians. And I think paying too much attention, Del, to issues like this
But this
really
is an important
doesn't
issue because we talk a lot about housing affordability, and a lot of Australians are really unable to enter the housing market. Yet a minister from your government is purchasing a property, negatively gearing it, failing to declare it, and then essentially getting away with an apology. As you can imagine, there would be a lot of people that might be quite outraged by this.
But you're actually mixing a whole lot of issues there. If you want to talk about housing affordability, that's a serious policy discussion, and that's one where we're focusing on getting more supply into the market and encouraging states to release that land for people's use. We also have got a cities policy which is looking at integrating transport, environmental outcomes, the building of dwellings all into one proper plan. Now, that is very different to an issue in relation to an investment that one member of the Parliament, regardless of their political background, may make.
Yes, but the Prime Minister talks about holding the ministers to a higher standard. And, there might be people that say, well, essentially she's broken the rules. 35 days is the timeline. She took more than 100 days to declare it. Getting away with an apology, like I said, there would be quite a bit of outrage from the public, as you can imagine.
Well, as members of Parliament, we're all accountable, much more so than any other members of the public. All our travel arrangements and our expenses and our assets are all there for people to see. We're very conscious that, we have a major responsibility in the Parliament as elected members of Australia. So we take those responsibilities seriously. Michaelia Cash is no different from any other member of the team. She takes those responsibilities seriously. She's an excellent minister doing an outstanding job. This is one oversight for which she's apologised.
Right, Minister Josh Frydenberg, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.